When I was young, our family vacations involved a lot of time in the car. We would drive out to the countryside, across the channel, to Paris on occasion, and once all the way to Tuscany. And to keep us occupied, or at least distracted from the possibility that my father was driving on the wrong side of the road, we listened to tapes, to audiobooks. And there is one author that I recall being played most vividly, Bill Bryson. Born in Des Moines and having lived for some time in Britain, Bryson served as the Chancellor of Durham University and became one of the most celebrated travel writers of the time. His first volume details early travels in Europe. Then he wrote a book called Notes from a Small Island, describing his time in the United Kingdom. And then perhaps most popularly, he wrote A Walk in the Woods, rediscovering America on the Appalachian Trail, which was consequently made into a movie in which Robert Redford starred as Bryson himself. And at least for me, there was something distinctly calming, something soothing about listening to someone telling stories of their travels, describing the sights, evoking the sounds, painting pictures in words of places in the world that allowed me to voyage vicariously through their memory. And it was just over 2 millennia ago, around the time that Ezra erected the Second Temple, that Greeks moving east, conquering lands from Persia to Egypt, first sought to capture sites in writing for readers back home, leading eventually to the list that we now call the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Diodorus Siculus, Antiparos, Sidonius, Philo of Byzantium, and many more produced this list of edifices that have since lived in history as places of myth and legend. The 7 are the Great Pyramid of Giza, the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, the statue of Zeus at Olympia, the Temple of Artemis at Ephesus, the Mausoleum of Halicarnassus, the Colossus of Rhodes, and the Pharos, or Lighthouse, of Alexandria. Now, most of these wonders have since been destroyed in everything from earthquakes to invasions and fire. In fact, only one remaining wonder is still intact, still extant for tourists to see, and it is the most ancient of the group, the Pyramid at Giza. But there is a wonder of the ancient world far older than that limestone tomb made for King Khufu and far more consequential for the history of humankind, and it is a wonder that was laid waste at the hands of heaven. We read this morning of the Tower of Babel. And in the wake of the Great Flood, mere generations after a population liquidation, we're told that humanity came in one voice. V'hi chol haaretz, safa echat, the entire world was of one speech, dvarim achadim, and one tongue. V'yomru, and they said to each other, Havan nivne lanu ir, let us build a city, umigdal, a tower. V'rosho v'shamayim, with its head in the heavens, v'na'as lanu shem, let us make for ourselves a name. Something about the construction was suspect because it drew God's attention and led him to bring their project to an end. V'yafetz Hashem otam misham, God scattered them from there al pnei chol haaretz, across the face of the land, v'yachtelu livnot, and they ceased building. And this is my question. What was wrong with the Tower of Babel? Does God not take pride in the power of human beings to conceive of new ideas, to push toward new frontiers, to perpetually extend our reach? Did God not intend for us to build and invent and fashion just as he had? Are we not in the image of God, bidden to imitate his creativity? Right now, Elon Musk is hatching a plan to put a man on Mars. And once an American official was asked why there is a need to go to Mars, and he gave the following answer: because it's next. Because we came out of the cave and we looked over the hill and we saw fire, and we crossed the ocean and we pioneered the West and we took to the sky. And there is something deeply spiritual about this perspective that sees humanity on a mission to live up to our powers, to manifest our talents, to keep forging ahead in a bid to see what we can do, what we can become, and how far we can lift each other up. God put us here to cultivate the earth and elevate our lives and leave the world better than we found it. So why on earth does God see a united humanity standing hand in hand, speaking in one voice, seeking to build as an evil in need of disruption? Somewhat well known is the answer provided by the Netziv, the 19th century head of the famed Volozhin yeshiva, because for him, Babel was not a place of discovery, but dystopia. And the tower was not a testament to the talents of humanity, but the malice of tyrants. In his words, the tower was built high not to inspire men and women to raise their expectations, but to keep an eye on them. Hamigdal litzapot mimenu. It was a watchtower to look out from, shelo yu nifradim, so that no one would leave. So God's interruption of the tower's construction for the Netziv was less an objection to human ingenuity than a rejection of totalitarianism. But there is another reading of this tower's purpose, one far less sinister, but no less at odds with our mission. Rabbi David Kimchi, the Radak, sees the tower as a beacon for sheep herders. Hamigdalia or l'roim, it would give light off for shepherds. Shim yatsa chutz migvol hazot, so if they were to stray beyond the borders, yizkor ha'ir, they would remember the city, v'yashuv elea, and return. Now what catastrophe awaits if the shepherds wander off? What terrible event would unfold if there was no tower to bring them back? Ulai, the Radak says, maybe nafutz al pnei kol haaretz. They would start to spread out. V'yashuvu sham zela mizrach v'zela ma'arav. Some would live in the east and some to the west, some to the north and some to the south. And the tragedy would be v'chavorotenu titpazar. Our society would disperse. So while an urban lighthouse for far-out shepherds might sound helpful, it was, for the Radak, a means to keep human beings from discovery, from exploring, from taking a walk in the woods. This is not, of course, on par with totalitarianism, but it has a kernel in common in that it is driven by fear. The intention beneath the invention of the tower for the Radak was not innovative, but repressive. It was a technology to stop humanity from evolving a visionary edifice to limit the horizons of the imagination. And perhaps that is why God scattered the population, not as a punishment, but as a prompt, a friendly prod to a humanity still scarred by the flood to move out and grow up and journey on. God nudged Noach's descendants to leave their little city, not to huddle in the shadows of a dread-inspired steeple conferring in simple sentences, but to see the world, learn to really speak and leave this earth better than they found it. So as the leaves begin to fall and temperatures begin to drop, as nature starts to contract, let us all resist the inclination to hibernate and withdrawal. Let us all remain committed to the mission of disseminating our attention and spreading our care and pushing our frontier as we face the wonder of the world. Let us all build towers of light that do not narrow our horizons but extend our reach as we seek to heal and teach and learn from each other. I wish you all a Shavua Tov.